The morning sun painted the fields of New Terra in golden light. Hyunwoo Park stood on his porch, drinking coffee and watching his twin children run toward the school bus. Ji-ho carried his sister Nari's backpack while she skipped beside him, both of them 8 years old and full of energy. "Be good today," So-min called from the kitchen window. She waved at the children as they climbed onto the yellow bus with their classmates. 15 other human children from the farming colony lived scattered across the valley. The school bus was their lifeline to friendship and learning. Hyunwoo smiled and went inside. As colony administrator, he had reports to review and supply orders to approve. New Terra was a peaceful place, far from the busy trade routes and political tensions of the inner worlds. That was exactly why families like his chose to live here. The colony had been established only 5 years ago. 200 adults had brought their dreams and children to this quiet planet. They grew food, raised animals, and built a simple life under alien stars. The nearest military base was 3 star systems away. They had never needed protection before. At exactly 10 in the morning, the sky changed. Massive ships appeared overhead without warning. They were nothing like human vessels, crystalline and angular, catching sunlight like living jewels. The ships were huge, each one the size of a city block. They moved in perfect formation, casting shadows across the entire valley. Hyunwoo ran outside and grabbed his communicator. "This is Colony Admin Park. We have unknown vessels in our airspace. I repeat, unknown vessels approaching New Terra." The response came from Captain Dong-Hyun Lee at the small defense station. "We see them, Admin Park. Trying to establish communication now. All civilians should remain indoors." But the ships were not interested in talking. Beams of blue light shot down from the vessels. They did not target the buildings or the adults. Instead, they focused on one location, the school. Hyunwoo felt his heart stop. "The children," he whispered. He jumped into his transport and raced toward the school. Other parents were doing the same thing. Vehicles sped along dirt roads, kicking up clouds of dust as desperate mothers and fathers tried to reach their kids. Blue light surrounded the school building like a dome. Inside the dome, everything moved slowly. The children appeared frozen, their teacher, Mrs. Han, reaching toward them with her arms stretched out. But they were moving, just very, very slowly. "No, no, no." So-min arrived beside Hyunwoo. She pounded, her fists against the blue barrier. Her hands passed right through it, but she could not move forward. Some invisible force held her back. Other parents gathered around the school. They screamed and cried and tried to break through, but nothing worked. They could only watch as figures in crystal armor walked into the building. The aliens moved normally inside the blue dome while everything else crawled at a snail's pace. The crystal beings were tall and thin, with multiple arms and faces that looked like cut gems. They carried devices that hummed with energy. One by one, they lifted the children. Ji-ho, Nari, and all their classmates were gathered up like packages. "They're taking them," someone shouted. "They're stealing our children." Captain Lee arrived, with his small security team. He had 6 men and some basic weapons. "Stand back, we'll handle this." The security team fired at the alien ships. Their bullets and energy blasts hit the crystal hulls and bounced off like raindrops. The aliens did not even seem to notice. In minutes, it was over. The crystal beings carried all 17 children up into their ships using beams of light. The blue dome disappeared. The school stood empty with only Mrs. Han left behind. She collapsed to her knees, staring at the vacant desks. The alien ships rose into the sky. Their crystal surfaces caught the sunlight one last time before they vanished into hyperspace, taking the children with them. Hyunwoo fell to the ground. So-min screamed until her voice broke. All around them, parents wept and called out the names of their sons and daughters. The playground equipment sat still and silent. Swings moved gently in the breeze with no one to push them. Captain Lee worked frantically with his communicator. "Mayday, Mayday, this is New Terra Defense Station. We have been attacked by unknown hostile forces. They have taken our children. All of our children. 17 human minors have been kidnapped. Ships appear to be of crystal construction, technology unknown. They jumped to hyperspace, bearing 047 Mark 12. The response came quickly from the nearest Federation outpost. New Terra, this is Outpost Bravo. Confirm your last transmission. Did you say children were taken? Confirmed. 17 children, ages 6 to 10. The attackers ignored all adults and infrastructure. They came only for the kids. A long pause filled the comm channel. Then, New Terra, we are forwarding your report to Terra Command immediately. Hold position and document everything. Help is coming. But what kind of help could bring back children who had vanished into the vast darkness between stars? Mrs. Han walked out of the school building. Her face was pale and her hands shook. They moved so fast, she whispered. But not like they were in a hurry. Like it was routine. Like they had done this before. The parents gathered in the empty school. They sat in tiny chairs made for children and tried to understand what had happened. The aliens had not demanded anything. They had not given any warnings or conditions. They had simply taken the most precious thing the colony possessed and left. Hyunwoo held So-min as she cried. Around them, other families tried to comfort each other. But comfort seemed impossible. Their children were gone, stolen by crystal beings who had vanished among the stars. Why? So-min asked through her tears. Why? Did they take our babies? No one had an answer. The empty school held only silence and the faint smell of chalk dust. Outside, the alien ship's shadow still seemed to darken the ground where they had hovered. Captain Lee made one final transmission that day. His voice was steady, but his words carried the weight of a colony's heartbreak. Terra Command, this is New Terra. The enemy took our children. 17 souls. We await your orders. In the distance, the sun was setting. It would be the first night in 5 years that New Terra's children would not sleep in their own beds under the protection of their parents. Somewhere among the stars, Jiho and Nari and their friends were traveling toward an unknown fate. The parents of New Terra could only wait and hope that someone, somewhere, would bring their children home. Admiral Tae-young Kim was reviewing supply reports when the emergency alert sounded. Red lights flashed throughout Terra Command, and his aide rushed into the office with a data pad. Sir, we have a priority transmission from the outer colonies. New Terra has been attacked. Tae-young had commanded the Federation Navy for 20 years. He had seen pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens. But when he read the report, his coffee cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. They took children? He asked. Only children? Yes, sir. 17 human minors, ages 6 to 10. The attackers ignored all adults and military targets. The admiral stood up slowly. Around him, the command center continued its normal operations. Officers moved between stations, checking sensors and coordinating supply runs. They had no idea that everything was about to change. Get me Dr. Yoonji Choi from Xenobiology. And patch me through to the president immediately. Dr. Choi arrived within minutes. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had spent her life studying alien species. When Tae-young explained the situation, her face went white. Crystal ships, you said, multiple arms? She pulled up files on her tablet. That sounds like the Vextar Empire. They're collectors. Collectors of what? Specimens. They take interesting life forms from developing worlds for study. But Admiral... She paused and looked at the report again. They usually take adults. Adult specimens are stronger and more useful for labor or experimentation. In most species, children are considered worthless. Tae-young felt a cold weight in his stomach. They don't understand what they've done, do they? No, sir. They have no idea. The connection to President Jae-sung-han came through on the main screen. The president was a calm man who had guided humanity through 3 trade wars and 2 first contact situations. But when he heard about the children, his expression changed completely. How many ships do we have battle-ready? He asked immediately. Sir, perhaps we should try diplomacy first, suggested his aide. Diplomacy? The president's voice was quiet, but everyone in the command center heard it clearly. They took our children. There will be no diplomacy until our children are returned. Within 2 hours, President Han addressed the Federation Emergency Council. The representatives from various colonies and sectors gathered in the Great Hall, on Earth. When the president explained what had happened at New Terra, the room fell silent. We are issuing an ultimatum to the Vextar Empire, President Han announced. They have 72 hours to return all 17 children to their families, unharmed. If they refuse, or if they harm even one child, we will consider it an act of war against humanity itself. The message was broadcast across all galactic communication networks. Every species with hyperspace communication received the same transmission. Return our children in 72 hours, or face the consequences. The galactic community responded with confusion and some amusement. The Corvani Trade Union sent a polite message suggesting that humans were overreacting to a minor incident. The Althari Republic offered to mediate, but made it clear they considered the human response excessive. 17 individuals out of billions, commented Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Alliance. Surely the humans can produce more offspring to replace them. These responses were forwarded to Terra Command. Admiral Tae-Young read them and felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. They don't understand us at all, he told Dr. Choi. No, they don't. Most species see their young as replaceable resources. Humans are different. Captain Minho Song of the Dreadnought Vengeance received his orders that same day. All ships are to begin immediate combat preparation. Every military vessel, merchant ship capable of mounting weapons, and civilian craft with hyperspace capability is to report for duty. Sir, his first officer asked, what's our target? Everything, Captain Song replied. Every Vextar ship, station, and settlement we can find. The mobilization began immediately. On Earth, weapon factories that had been producing mining equipment switched to making warheads. Shipbuilders who made passenger liners started building destroyers. The entire Federation economy shifted toward a single goal. Dr. Choi worked with intelligence officers to locate Vexitar territory. They had records of the crystal beings from trade contacts and exploration reports. The Vextar controlled 47 star systems in a region called the Kepler Void, far from human space. They're very advanced, Dr. Choi reported. Their technology is based on living crystal that can repair itself. Their ships are fast and well defended. Can we beat them? Admiral Tae-Young asked. In a fair fight? Probably not. They have superior technology and home field advantage. The Admiral nodded. Then we won't fight fair. As the 72-hour deadline approached, more reports came, in from across the galaxy. Other species were watching the human response with growing concern. Never before had they seen an entire civilization mobilize over such a small number of individuals. It's just 17 beings, the Vextar Queen finally responded through a communication relay. Your reaction is disproportionate. We will return them when our research is complete. President Han read the message in his office, surrounded by his advisors. Research? He asked quietly. They're using our children for research? His aide tried to offer comfort. Sir, perhaps they don't mean any harm. Maybe it's just medical examination. The president looked at him with eyes that seemed very tired and very cold. They took children from their parents to use them for research, and they think 72 hours is not enough time to return them. He paused and looked out the window at Earth's blue sky. Send the response. The message that went out to the Vextar Empire was short. The deadline has passed, the children were not returned, we are coming. But the message that went to the human fleet was longer. Every man, woman, and ship capable of fighting is to report immediately. We are going to war, not for territory, not for resources, not for politics. We are going to war for our children. Captain. Song stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and watched as more ships arrived every hour. Destroyers, frigates, merchant vessels with hastily mounted weapons, even civilian yachts carrying missiles. The fleet grew larger than anything humanity had ever assembled. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we now have over 8,000 ships ready for combat. Good. But we need more. More, sir? This is already the largest fleet in human history. Captain, Song looked at the tactical display showing the growing armada. They have our children. We need enough ships to make sure we get them back and enough ships to make sure this never happens again. The 72 hours were over. The Vextar had not returned the children. Now, 17 small lives had become the spark that would ignite the greatest military response in human history. In the depths of space, the human fleet began its journey toward the Kepler void, carrying the rage of an entire species. The 72 hours passed with no word from the Vextar Empire. President Jae-sung-han stood in the war room, surrounded by his military advisors, and gave the order that would change galactic history. Begin Operation Righteous Fury. All ships are free to engage any Vextar targets. What happened next shocked every species in known space. The human response was not like any war they had ever seen. Engineering Chief Kyung Soo-yoon had spent the past 3 days converting mining ships into weapons of war. Asteroid miners became kinetic bombardment platforms. Their industrial drilling, lasers were refocused into ship-killing beams. Cargo haulers were packed with explosives and turned into guided missiles. "We're not just building a fleet," Kyung-soo told his team. "We're building the tools to end a species." The first human ships reached Vextar territory within a week. Commander Yuna Lim led a squadron of 12 destroyers to a Vextar mining outpost. The crystal beings had built a beautiful station that harvested rare minerals from an asteroid. Field standard military protocol would have been to demand surrender, then target the station's weapons and engines. Commander Lim did not follow standard protocol. "All ships, target the entire station. Leave nothing but debris." "Commander, there are civilian workers on that station," her tactical officer reported. "They are part of the species that took our children." Fire. The mining station disappeared in a ball of fire. 600 Vextar civilians died in seconds. The asteroid field was left empty except for glowing wreckage. Across Vextar territory, the pattern repeated itself. Human forces ignored military targets and went straight for civilian installations. Trade stations, research facilities, agricultural platforms, all were destroyed without warning or mercy. The Vextar military tried to respond, but the humans were fighting a different kind of war. When Vextar warships approached human fleets, the humans would ram their ships into the enemy vessels. Captain after captain sacrificed their ships and crews for a single goal: maximum damage to the Vextar. General Wu Jin Kang explained the strategy to horrified alien observers from other species. "They took our children. That means their entire species has forfeited the right to exist. This is not conquest. This is extermination." The galactic community tried to intervene. The Althari Republic sent diplomatic ships to negotiate a ceasefire. The Corvani Trade Union offered to mediate. The humans destroyed any ship that tried to help the Vextar regardless of species. "You want to protect them?" Admiral Tae-young Kim asked an Althari diplomat. "Then you can share their fate." Within 2 weeks, the Vextar Empire had lost 30% of their civilian infrastructure. Their military was intact, but their economy was collapsing. Queen Zixithara finally agreed to direct communication with the human leadership. The crystal being appeared on the main screen at Terra Command. She was beautiful in an alien way, her face like a cut diamond reflecting light in rainbow patterns. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes. "Human leaders, your response to our specimen collection has been extreme. We are willing to negotiate the return of the juvenile samples." President Han looked at her with cold eyes. "Specimen collection? Juvenile samples? You took our children from their families to experiment on them. They are merely biological curiosities. Your emotional attachment to immature members of your species is irrational. We can offer compensation for the inconvenience." The president was quiet for a long moment. Everyone in the command center could feel the rage building in him like pressure in a sealed container. "Compensation for the inconvenience," he repeated slowly. "You steal children from their parents and call it an inconvenience. Your reaction has been disproportionate. Surely the lives of a few juveniles are not worth this destruction." That was when President Han showed the Vextar Queen what human rage truly looked like. Every ship, every station, every world controlled by the Vextar Empire will be reduced to ash and empty space. Your species will be remembered only as a warning to others. Never touch a human child. The transmission ended. Queen Zixithara was left staring at a blank screen. finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake. The war escalated again. Human forces began targeting Vextar colony worlds. Entire planets were evacuated as human ships appeared in orbit. Those who could not escape faced bombardment from space. Pilot Hai Wan Jung led bombing runs that turned crystal cities into glass craters. Her squadron had lost 2 pilots to Vextar defenses, but they kept flying mission after mission. "How many more cities?" her wingman asked during a brief rest. "All of them," Haiwan replied. "Every last one." The breakthrough came when human commandos captured a Vextar research vessel. Under interrogation, the crystal being revealed the location of the facility where the human children were being held. The specimen storage facility is located in the Deep Void region, the prisoner said through a translation device. "The gravitational anomalies make approach impossible for most ships." General Kang leaned forward. "Most ships?" The facility was built there specifically because it cannot be reached by conventional fleets. The space distortions would destroy any vessel attempting to navigate them. "What about unconventional fleets?" The Vextar prisoner seemed confused. "I do not understand your meaning." General Kang smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You will." The information was transmitted to Admiral Tae-Young Kim aboard the flagship Retribution. He studied the navigation charts showing the Kepler Void, a region of twisted space where gravity flowed in impossible directions. "Can we get through it?" he asked his navigation officer. "Sir, we would lose most of the fleet attempting to navigate those gravitational anomalies. But some ships would make it through?" "Yes, sir, probably." "Then we go. Ready the fleet for approach to the Kepler Void." As the massive human armada prepared to enter the most dangerous region of space in the galaxy, reports came in from across Vextar territory. 47 star systems were burning. Millions of crystal beings had fled their homes. The Vextar military was scattered and demoralized, but the children were still missing. Somewhere in the depths of the void where space itself was broken and twisted. Admiral Kim stood on his bridge and looked out at the 10,000 ships of the human fleet. They were miners and merchants, farmers and factory workers, all transformed into instruments of vengeance by the simple fact that someone had taken their children. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Ahead lies the most dangerous space in the known galaxy. Many of us will not survive the approach, but our children are waiting in the darkness beyond, and we will bring them home." The fleet entered the Kepler. Void and space around them began to tear and twist as gravity became their enemy. Admiral Sang-Ho Bei watched his ships die one by one as they entered the Kepler Void. Space itself was twisted here, gravity flowing in directions that should not exist. Ships that flew too close together were crushed as gravitational fields collapsed on themselves. Others were torn apart when they hit invisible walls of warped space-time. "We've lost the cruiser Defiance," his tactical officer reported. "Gravitational shear tore her in half." "Mark the hazard and keep going," Admiral Bei replied. He had started this journey with 10,000 ships. Now he had fewer than 5,000, and they were still 3 days from their target. But the human fleet kept moving forward. When ships were destroyed, the others learned from their fate and found new paths through the deadly maze. Mining vessels led the way, their equipment adapted to detect gravitational anomalies. Civilian cargo ships followed in their wake, carrying the weapons and marines needed for the rescue mission. Captain Ki-Hyun Cha piloted his transport through a field of twisted gravity that would have been impossible to navigate a week ago. But desperation had made the human pilots into masters of flying through hell itself. "Contact ahead," his sensor operator called out. "It's huge." The Vextar research facility appeared through the darkness like a crystal mountain floating in space. It was larger than a city, with dozens of spires and platforms connected by bridges of living crystal. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its surface in hypnotic rhythms. "That's where they are," Admiral Bei said quietly. "That's where our children are." The facility was heavily defended. Vexitar warships emerged from hidden bays, their crystal hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Energy weapons fired across space, but the human fleet had come too far to be stopped now. "All ships, ignore the defenders. Get our people to the facility." Medical Officer Ji-un. Oh was aboard the first boarding craft to reach the station. She had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission because she had 3 children of her own back on Earth. She understood what the parents of New Terra were feeling. The boarding craft cut through the station's hull with industrial lasers. Human Marines poured inside, expecting fierce resistance. Instead, they found confused Vextar researchers running through corridors in panic. "Where are the human children?" Ji-un demanded of the first alien they captured, the crystal being chittered, in its own language before the translator engaged. "Biological Research Section 7, Level 43, but you cannot remove them now. The testing phase is not complete." Ji-un felt rage rise in her throat like bile. "Testing phase?" She led the Marine squad through corridors filled with strange equipment and glowing specimens in crystal tanks. They passed chambers filled with creatures from dozens of different worlds, all being studied like laboratory animals. Finally, they found Section 7. The human children were there, alive, but changed. They sat in a large room with comfortable furniture and toys, but the walls were made of the same crystal as everything else in the facility. Jiho and Nari Park were playing a game with blocks while other children watched, but something was wrong with their eyes. "Hello," 8-year-old Nari said when she saw the rescue team. "We knew you would come. We could feel your anger from here." Ji-un knelt down beside the little girl. "Are you hurt? Did they harm any of you?" "They took samples," Jiho replied. His voice was calm, too calm for a child who had been kidnapped and experimented on. "Blood and hair and skin. They wanted to understand how we think." "It was interesting," Nari added. "We learned things too." The other children gathered around the rescue team. They all had that same strange calmness, as if they were looking at something the adults could not see. "We need to get you out of here," Ji-un said. "Your parents are worried sick." "We know," the children said together in perfect unison. Dr. Insu Kwan arrived with the second wave of Marines. As the mission psychologist, his job was to evaluate the children's mental state after their captivity. What he found made his blood run cold. The children were connected somehow. When one spoke, the others seemed to already know what would be said. They moved together like parts of a single organism, and their eyes held a depth of understanding that no 8-year-old should possess. "What did they do to you?" Dr. Kwan asked gently. "They studied our brains," Jiho explained. "They wanted to know why humans get so angry when their children are threatened. They ran tests and scans and took measurements. But they learned something they did not expect," Nari continued. "Human children are not just small humans. We are something different when we are young, something with potential." The rescue team found the research files in the facility's central computer. Dr. Research Prime Kethvar had been studying human neurochemistry, trying to understand the extreme response their kidnapping had triggered. What the Vextar discovered terrified them. Human children possessed underdeveloped psychic potential that became explosive when the entire species experienced unified emotion. The rage of billions of humans had reached across space to touch the 17 children, awakening abilities that should have remained dormant for generations. "We can feel all of you," Nari said to the rescue team. "Every human who is angry because we were taken. Every parent who is afraid for their children. Every soldier who came to save us." "It's beautiful," Jiho added. "Like music made of feelings." As the children were loaded onto transport ships, something incredible happened. The human fleet began fighting with supernatural coordination. Marines knew where enemies were hiding before they could be seen. Pilots dodged attacks that had not been fired yet. Ship captains made tactical decisions that seemed impossible but worked perfectly. The children were broadcasting their enhanced emotional state across the human fleet. Every warrior became connected to the collective rage and determination of their species. Captain Seungmin Park led a squad of Marines through the facility's lower levels. He was Jiho and Nari's uncle, and had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments because his family was involved. Now he found himself fighting with abilities he had never possessed before. He could sense Vextar soldiers before they appeared. He could predict their movements and counter their attacks. His entire squad moved like dancers, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. "What's happening to us?" one of his Marines asked. "The children," Captain Park replied. "They're showing us how to feel what they feel." The battle for the research facility lasted only 6 hours. The human forces, guided by the psychic awareness of their rescued children, overwhelmed the defenders with ease. Every Vextar research station in the Kepler void was captured or destroyed. But as the rescue fleet prepared to leave, the children made a disturbing request. "We want to speak to the Vextar Queen," Nari announced. "Absolutely not," Admiral Bay replied. "We're taking you home to your parents." "She needs to understand what she started," Jiho said. "She needs to see what we have become." Dr. Kwan studied the children with growing concern. They had been changed by their experience, evolved beyond their trauma into something new and potentially dangerous. They possessed abilities that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. "What do you want to tell her?" he asked. The 17 children looked at him with eyes that held the combined wisdom and rage of their entire species. "We want to teach her about human children," they said in unison. "And what happens to those who harm us?" The final assault on the Vextar homeworld began 3 days after the children were rescued. Fleet Commander Bo Young-shin had expected a standard planetary siege, but the battle became something far beyond normal warfare. The 17 human children were aboard the flagship Resolution, safely behind multiple layers of armor and shields. But their presence transformed every human warrior in the fleet into something more than they had been before. "All ships report ready for final assault," Commander Shin announced. Around her, the bridge crew moved with perfect coordination. They could sense each other's intentions, feel the rhythm of battle before it began. The Vextar homeworld was beautiful, a crystal sphere that caught starlight and scattered it into rainbow patterns. Cities grew like living jewels across its surface, connected by bridges of light that pulsed with energy. It was the heart of a civilization millions of years old. Marine Captain Sung-Min Park led the first wave of ground forces toward the planet's surface. His troops were farmers and miners who had been transformed into the deadliest fighting force in human history. They moved through the Vextar defenses like water flowing around rocks, each soldier knowing exactly where to strike. "This is wrong," one of the newer Marines whispered as they advanced through a crystal city. "We're not soldiers. We're just people who wanted their kids back." "We are exactly what we need to be," Captain Park replied. The connection to the children allowed him to feel the determination of every human in the fleet. "We are parents protecting our young." The Vextar defenders tried to mount resistance, but they faced an enemy unlike anything in their experience. Human soldiers anticipated their movements, countered their strategies before they could be implemented, and fought with the focused rage of a species whose most sacred bond had been violated. Queen Zixathera watched the battle from her crystal palace at the planet's core. Her military advisors chittered in panic around her, reporting impossible human victories across the planet's surface. "How are they doing this?" she demanded. "Our intelligence showed humans as individualistic, chaotic in battle." "Your Majesty," one advisor replied, "the specimens we collected appear to have developed unexpected capabilities. They are somehow coordinating the entire human attack force. 17 juveniles are commanding an army of millions?" "Not commanding, Majesty. Connecting. They have become a link between all human minds in the fleet." The Queen felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. Not just for her own life, but for the survival of her species. The humans had proven they were willing to exterminate an entire civilization for 17 children. What would they do now that those children had become something more than human? As the battle raged, Ambassador Kelnoth of the Galactic Council arrived at the edge of the system. His ship broadcast emergency diplomatic signals, requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations. President Jae Sung-han received the transmission. Aboard his command ship, he looked older than he had a month ago, worn down by the weight of commanding humanity's first war of extinction. "Mr. President," Ambassador Kelnoth's voice came through the communicator. "The Galactic Council demands an immediate end to hostilities. The Vextar Empire is willing to pay any reparations you require. Reparations? President Han laughed, but there was no humor in it. They want to pay us money for kidnapping our children and using them for experiments? Sir, the destruction of an entire species goes against all galactic law. You cannot simply eliminate the Vextar because of one incident. Watch us. The transmission ended. President Han turned to his staff. Any ship that interferes with our operations is to be treated as hostile. On the planet's surface, the crystal cities were falling one by one. But as human forces approached the Queen's palace, something unexpected happened. The 17 children requested to be brought down to the planet. Absolutely not, Admiral Sangho Bei replied. You've been through enough. We'll finish this without you. No, Nari Park said simply. This started because of us. We need to be the ones who finish it. Dr. Insu Kwan studied the children with growing concern. In the days since their rescue, they had continued to evolve. Their psychic abilities were growing stronger, their connection to humanity deeper. They were becoming something unprecedented, a bridge between individual consciousness and collective will. What do you want to do? He asked them. We want to teach, Jiho replied. Not just the Queen, but everyone watching. They need to understand what human children represent. Against all military protocol, the children were brought to the planet's surface. They walked through the Crystal City toward the Queen's palace, surrounded by human marines but clearly leading the advance. Queen Zixathera met them in her throne room, a vast chamber carved from a single massive crystal. She was more beautiful and terrible than any creature the humans had ever seen, her crystalline form reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. So you are the specimens that have caused all this destruction, she said through her translator. We are human children, Nari replied simply. We are the future of our species. You are 17 individuals out of billions. Your species' reaction to your temporary relocation was completely irrational. The children looked at each other and then back at the Queen. When they spoke, their voices harmonized in a way that made the crystal chamber ring like a bell. You do not understand what you took, they said together. We are not just young humans. We are hope given form. We are the dreams of our parents made real. We are the promise that humanity will continue, beyond any single lifetime. The Queen's crystalline form flickered with confusion. Biological reproduction is common to all species. Juveniles can be replaced. No, the children replied. We cannot be replaced. Each of us is unique, irreplaceable, sacred to our people. When you took us, you did not just steal 17 individuals. You attacked the very foundation of what makes humanity human. Around them, the human Marines felt the truth of those words in their hearts. They had not come all this way just for 17 children. They had come to protect the idea that children mattered, that the young were worth any sacrifice. But we learned something from you, the children continued. We learned that our potential was greater than anyone knew. We learned that human emotions could reach across space when they were pure and strong enough. We learned that we could become something new. The Queen saw the truth then, reflected in 17 pairs of eyes that held the wisdom of their entire species. These were not just human children anymore. They were evolution in action, change sparked by trauma, but guided by love. What do you want from me? She asked. We want you to remember, Nari said. We want every species in the galaxy to remember that human children are not specimens or resources or replaceable units. We are the future, and we are protected by the most powerful force in the universe, the love of our parents. And we want you to help us teach that lesson, Jiho added. Not through fear, but through understanding. Queen Zixathara felt something she had never experienced, the weight of genuine remorse. She had seen her civilization reduced to ash because she had not understood the simple truth that these children were trying to explain. How? She asked. The children smiled, and for the first time since their rescue, they looked like normal 8-year-olds, again. You help us rebuild what was destroyed. You help us create something better. You help us show the galaxy that even the worst mistakes can become the foundation for something good. And so the war that had begun with 17 kidnapped children ended with a choice for redemption. The Vextar Empire would survive, but it would be forever changed. They would become the guardians of the very principle they had violated, that the children of any species were sacred and untouchable. The lesson was learned. Across the galaxy, new diplomatic protocols were established. Article 1 of every treaty with humanity now read, "The children of humanity are sacred. To harm them is to invite the wrath of their entire species." But more than that, the 17 Scifistories, children of New Terra, had become something unprecedented. Bridges between individual consciousness and collective will, living symbols of humanity's capacity for both destruction and mercy. They returned home to parents who wept with joy and relief. But they also carried with them the knowledge that they had become the first of something new, human children who could feel the love and protection of their entire species as a living force. The galaxy was safer for all children because 17 human kids had been brave enough to transform their trauma into wisdom, and their species' rage into a promise of protection that would echo among the stars forever.